Hello and welcome into this edition of the Golf Channel Podcast with Rex and Lav. Well, folks, I cannot quite believe my eyes while covering the WM Phoenix Open. I literally just interviewed Chris Gotterup on the 18th green at TPC Scottsdale, and I remarked to him, Rex, the one and only time that you were leading this golf tournament on Sunday is right here, right now, after prevailing over Hideki Matsuyama in a playoff. What a fun, frenetic, frantic final hour in Scottsdale, wasn't it?
It really was, and it really shows you why Scottsdale is so special. I mean, we talk a lot about the crowds. We talk a lot about the scene. You had a lot of fun last week, literally running around the golf course. You literally ran around the golf course. I wanted to touch on that later, but not only is it a great scene, but it's also great theater when you have an opportunity like this, where I was already starting to jot down notes. Hideki's going to win again. He's going to win the event for the third time. And then suddenly it looked like he was probably going to win it in a playoff again. And he drove the ball so poorly. And I think that opened the door for a lot of players, but only one of them was able to walk through it. And that was Chris Gotterup. And he finished up about an hour before Hideki actually made it down the 18th hole. So he had a lot of time to sit and think about it. But it's such an impressive next step for Chris Gotterup. You and I talked a lot about it when he won the Sony Open a few weeks ago about what does he have to do to break through to that next level. And like, there's plenty of things statistically you can break down and say, yes, he needs to get better at his putting. He needs to get better at his wedge play. From inside 100 yards, he ranked outside the top 100 on the PGA Tour. But man, you have to love his fight. You have to love how he reacts in that moment where he just absorbs everything. And then every single time he stands on that 18th green with Amanda Balionis, she makes him cry. I don't understand the dichotomy there.
Either do I. This is a guy who's like oozing jock swagger. Like, the dude is tough. He's rough and tumble. He's completely unafraid. And I was actually thinking about sort of the course of his career and how did he develop this sort of toughness? How did he develop this sort of aggression? I think some of it can be attributed to his college journey, right? Like, he played at small Rutgers, was largely overlooked, pretty dominant player there, had to then prove himself when he went to Oklahoma, eventually became the Haskins Award winner, the best college player in the world. Like, there's always been a little bit of him that's had a chip on his shoulder, a little bit of, I'll show you this, wanting to prove himself. When you look at his journey on the PGA Tour, won an opposite field event in Myrtle Beach a couple years ago. That just sort of shored up some job security for the next 2 years. Then you look at what he did last year at the Scottish Open, outdueling Rory McIlroy head-to-head in Scotland a week before Rory was going to be the hometown hero at the Open Championship. That sort of elevated Chris Gotterup's stature and said, look, I belong. What does this now signal about what he did at the Sony on the weekend on a golf course you wouldn't necessarily think that was going to be suited to him? And I think what he really showed over the past couple of days at TPC Scottsdale, Rex, was just a level of explosiveness from Chris Gotterup. Shooting 63 on a day that was really difficult for scoring on Thursday, and then just getting hot at the absolute perfect time on Sunday, making 5 birdies in his last 6 holes just to get into the playoff. He's not, I wouldn't say a completely fully formed, polished player yet, but on the PGA Tour, where his power and his aggression and his fearlessness between the ropes is going to work most weeks, like, he's one of the best players in the world, full stop, but I don't see this train stopping anytime soon.
His power off the tee, and we say this about a lot of different players, but I think the playoff hole was a perfect example of what he can do and a lot of other players cannot. He essentially just had a flip wedge in there, and Hideki was struggling off the tee. And I don't want to do the sports radio thing right now about did Hideki lose it, did Chris win it, because you can certainly point to a lot of things that Hideki did and didn't do, specifically hit his driver well all day Sunday, really all week long if you look at it statistically. But I'm going to give all the credit to Gotterup. He went out and won it. He birdied 6 of his last 7 holes, counting the playoff hole. I mean, if you're going to do that, you need to go ahead and take the victory lap and just accept the fact that, yes, I went out here and won this tournament. The next logical step, and we're going to have boots on the ground, our man Arron O is going to join us in a little while, and I want to get his thoughts. But the next logical step is to take next week is the first signature event of the season at Pebble Beach. And then you have Los Angeles coming up, and then Bay Hill. And then suddenly we start getting towards the major championships. There's no part of his game. You're right. He's not a complete player, I think, if you look at it from 30,000 feet. But it's not as though he's putting himself in these situations because he's getting lucky bounces. It's not as though he's putting himself in these situations because he's coming up against fields of inferior talent, because that's not the case at all. You look at essentially who he beat on Sunday at Scottsdale, Hideki Matsuyama, a world-class player, Scottie Scheffler somehow found a way to put himself into contention. Go back to last year in Scotland. He did it head-to-head with Rory McIlroy when everybody, not just in East Lothian, but everybody in Scotland was rooting for Rory McIlroy. He does it in these really pressure-packed, intense situations. And I love the idea that you brought it up. Yeah, he went to Rutgers. Probably didn't have a whole lot of offers coming out of high school, would be my guess, is how you end up at Rutgers. You probably would know better than me. But the chip on his shoulder is just the thing that just drives him.
And he's probably not going to have that chip for all that much longer. He's going to be vaulting down to the top 10 players of the world. Everyone's going to know who Chris Gotterup is, particularly winning on the biggest stage that you have on the PGA Tour with the most fans who are present at TPC Scottsdale. So that certainly has to help his reputation as well. I love watching him play golf. And if you don't like that style of play, if you don't like a guy who absolutely bashes it, if you don't like a guy who can hit incredible shots, I mean, we're talking 30-foot apexes with not just his, stinger shot with a 3-iron, with a driver, Rex, like the shot shaping that he has, even if he traditionally favors a left to right movement, how he alters the trajectory. It's so much fun to watch, even though he's not a polished player. He has plenty of time. He's 26 years old. He's just now finding his footing among like the marquee events on the PGA Tour. I love watching him. If you don't like watching him, I'm sorry. You and I cannot be friends. You mentioned the sports radio thing, Rex, of did Chris Gotterup win it or Hideki Matsuyama lose it? I don't know. I tend to skew towards Hideki Matsuyama losing this one.
Oh, I went the other way.
Was it improbable that Hideki Matsuyama was even in position to win this golf tournament? Certainly. I mean, Justin Ray had said, our old colleague at Golf Channel, this would have been historic had Hideki Matsuyama gone on to win. No player has lost that many strokes off the tee, ranked that low in a field among those who made the cut, besides Phil Mickelson. That was a territory that Hideki Matsuyama was in. Phil Mickelson errant territory. And yet he still had an opportunity to win this golf tournament before blading his fairway bunker shot on 18. This one is going to sting for a long time, just like it's going to sting for Michael Thorbjornsen, the young stud.
3 of 15 fairways on Sunday. That includes the playoff hole. That's just not going to get it done. I went and looked at sort of the chatter, the where they, on the map where they show where all the drives went for the day, the scatter chart. And he was the only one that went left, not just once, but twice. We put it in the bunker the first time and then ended up bouncing it into a water hazard the second time around. It's just not a bad drive. They were just horrific drives. So far offline. It's 20 yards.
Everyone, Rex, is clearing that water. So it wasn't just offline. It was also mishit. The fact that he couldn't clear what it was essentially a 290 carry.
Yeah, I mean, everything about it was just really bad. And this goes back to something that you and I have touched on in the past, where I contend, and this is just another perfect example of it, he is the most inconsistent star player in the game right now. Don't take anything away from him. Star player. Lean into the idea that he is very much a star player, but he is the most inconsistent of any of them out there. And I point to last season, where he wins the Century to start the season, doesn't post a top 10 on the PGA Tour the rest of the year. There's far too much talent. There's far too much on his pedigree for him to get through an entire season after the way you started and end up like that. Because I kept going back to the interview that Chris Gotterup did with Amanda Balionis, talking about winning at Sony was such a breakthrough for him because now he can play relaxed. Now he can play the rest of the year just looking ahead, not having to stress out about his job, not having to stress out about playing in the signature events. Somehow that doesn't register with Hideki, and this happens time and time again with him.
That's funny. So I wish I could reach my notebook right now because this was the first time that I was the Golf Central reporter. So I was preparing essentially what did I want to ask players. And as Sunday unfolded and it looked like a half dozen players, I was just rifling through pages trying to come up with questions. One of the questions I had for Hideki Matsuyama had he won this golf tournament was, this is now the third time in 4 years that you have won early in the season. How can you keep this going? How can this not just be an aberration? Of course, never found out Hideki Matsuyama blew past the reporters. We were going to interview him on the 18th green in a loser's interview. We won't know that for sure. But he does seem to be in a better place now, Rex. He won the Hero. I know it's an exhibition limited field, but this was now 6 consecutive top 20 finishes worldwide for Hideki dating to last fall. He's clearly discovered something, but I was getting a kick out of it. Listen to the broadcast on CBS. They were trying to come up with every reason possible for why Hideki was not finding the fairways. Was he putting too much weight onto his left side? Were his hands too far back? Was he aiming? Was his alignment off? Was his pause not pausey enough? There was another issue Um, down the stretch, he just couldn't find the timing. Should he have taken a drop? Should he have not taken a drop? Like, there was no real conclusion other than this has virtually no chance in order of hitting the fairway. It was tough to watch. Sadly, it was a little bit predictable. Really did want to touch on Thor as well, because he had an opportunity to win this golf tournament. It looked like we were going to be crowning a young star. Bogeyed 16, juiced up 9-iron, went over the back on 17, tugs it. How much one do you think this will hurt the young Michael Thorbjornsen?
I mean, it's not easy anytime you put yourself into contention. And I will say that, and they said this on the broadcast, that he probably got ahead of himself coming down the stretch. When she realizes I'm in the lead, it's uncharted territory, never been in this position before on the PGA Tour. And it's easy for a young player to start thinking about the trophy presentation, to start thinking about what it's going to be like to win on the PGA Tour for the first time. All the cliches that all of the sports psychologists warn young players, don't you dare go down this pathway. It's really easy to do it. I was going to take a victory lap, because I will go back to the beginning of the season saying that Michael was the player that I wanted to keep an eye on, just based on the way he finished up last season. When you look at his medical history and everything that he's dealt with since he really turned pro, and how he finished up last year, he played really well at the RSM Classic, give himself an opportunity to get into the signature events going into this season. It feels like he got momentum. This one's going to hang over him. I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for him, but also you have to think to yourself that you're doing something right, because you continue to give yourself these opportunities.
I mean, he's already had 2 runner-up finishes, and this is now his second full season on the PGA Tour. Add what was eventually a tie for third here at the Phoenix Open. It's pretty obvious that he's doing something right. I mean, finished the week first in strokes gained off the tee, just absolutely obliterated. It looked like he was going to win the golf tournament after what he did on 15, the par 5, hitting driver 8-iron into that hole, hit it about 10 feet. I'm like, all right, here we go. The crowning of a new star. I think this will be incredibly valuable for Thor. And the reason why I say that is the mistakes on 16 and 17 weren't necessarily poor shots. I think they were more strategy and course management mistakes, something that he can be easily learned from. You know, the juice environment you have on 16T, where's the one mistake you can't go with that back pin? Everyone knows you can't go long. Chris Gotterup, couple of groups ahead of him, he wouldn't have known this, of course. He hit pitching wedge, knowing it's going to take a hard first bounce because the greens are firm. Left himself 15 feet underneath the hole. He didn't make it. But that was the proper shot, the proper hole. On 17, where's the one spot you can't miss? Where would be the one huge giant X on a back pin? You can't go in the water left. You're dropping right there. Made it more difficult for him to try and get up and down just to save a par. And so I don't necessarily think that those were execution mistakes. I think those were more club choice, strategy, golf course management. I think that's probably easier for him to get over than maybe hitting the wrong shot at the wrong time. What do you think about that?
Well, that's fixable. Like, you can go back to your hotel room tonight. You can start going through the yardage book. You can start coming up with ways that, what did I do wrong here? How can I fix this? There's a reason why there's just as many sports psychologists and statisticians on the PGA Tour now as there are swing coaches and physical therapists, because that's such an important part of the game. And I think they earn every single penny that they're paid by making sure their players don't put themselves in a position like you just said. I always marvel at a PGA Tour player who gets mad because he's put himself in an impossible position around the green, can't hit the miracle chip, and now he's mad at his chip. When, in fact, no, it was your approach shot. You went long, you went short, you went left, you went right. You went to the one place you absolutely couldn't go. And if you have a good statistician on your team, they will always lean into, there's one place on every single green you can always miss it. And as long as you know that and you can stick to that game plan, this is what he's going to figure out as he gets a little bit older, a little bit more experienced. But as we've now seen, he has all the tools.
Also, Rex finishing in a tie for third was Scottie Scheffler. And it's funny, on Golf Central on Sunday morning, we actually started the show with Scottie, where the people at home probably thought that was a little bit disrespectful maybe to a Hideki or a Maverick McNeely or Nikolai Hogard. All these players, Rio Hisatsune, players who are trying to win on the PGA Tour. But the reason why we started with Scottie, Rex, is because it felt inevitable. It felt inevitable that Scottie was going to be in the mix. Not necessarily that he was going to win, but you look at what he did climbing up the leaderboard methodically. Tied for 89th after a rare off day on Thursday. Jumped up to tie for 28th at the halfway point. After 3 rounds, he was in a tie for 16th, just 5 shots back. What ends up happening? finishes a shot out of the playoff at 15 under par. What did you make of Scottie's comeback, his resilience, his perseverance during what, again, was pretty clearly not his best stuff? Yeah, he still almost won the golf tournament.
I couldn't watch Thursday's action because had a lot of things going on around my house, and I was going to circle back around at night and take a look at it. And I just happened to go on the internet, and I saw the chip shot that he mishits, and it comes back down to his feet. I thought it was AI. I kept trying to convince my son that
happened
can't
twice.
be real. That can't be real. Like, this is AI generated. I'm not going to be fooled by AI my entire life. Like, I'm starting to figure out what's real and what's not real. Apparently, I was not. It just proved he's one of us. So many good memes came out of both of those chip shots. You're absolutely right. It was shocking simply because you don't anticipate that from Scottie, especially the way he played the last time we saw him at the American Express, when it looked like he was just a robot out there going through the motions, and he's going to beat the field by 4 or 5 strokes every time he shows up, particularly on a golf course where he's had a lot of success before. So that part was shocking, but what he did the rest of the week, I thought, was even more shocking a little bit. He ended up finishing 17 under over his last 54 holes. He tied for the lead through 54 holes. If you could take out what he did on day one and just go start his round on Friday, he would have made it through to the playoff. That, to me, is the most entertaining side of Scottie Scheffler. And I know he probably didn't think so. And there was clearly a high level.
No, he did. He certainly did not think so on Thursday.
And there was clearly a high level of frustration. I mean, I know he's a perfectionist. And when he has a run like that, I'm sure it's going to eat him alive. But as a fan, I love that version of Scottie because it made it more interesting. He could have shot 2 under par on that first round, and then the rest of the week would have just been inevitable. But he ends up giving us this one gift, which I don't think we can expect to get very often from Scottie Scheffler.
I mean, I really hope golf fans, I really hope sports fans are stopping and recognizing what's happening and who we're witnessing. Like, the guy is absolutely remarkable. He spotted the field 10 shots on Thursday with that 73. He was 10 shots off the lead, and he still nearly won the golf tournament when the conditions got pretty exacting. I know we're going to have AO. He was walking inside the ropes. You really had to be precise. I know that's Scottie Scheffler's MO, but he still had to do it. He did it with rounds of 65, 67, and 64. Sure, is he going to nitpick? If he just shoots his average score is somewhere about 68.5. If he does that on Thursday, he's going to win the golf tournament by a couple of shots. You can nitpick that. You can nitpick a couple poor wedge shots. I think most notably on 9 and 18, he was inside 100 yards, couldn't hit either of those shots inside 25 feet. He said earlier in the week that he hit a bunch of balls before the event. Some of that was owing to the significant ice storm he had last week, which sort of disrupted his preparation back at home at Dallas. He's doing some driver testing as well. He said on Thursday he felt lost and even discouraged to want to go practice. But for Scottie, it wasn't even the cut streak and trying to avoid missing the cut for the first time in 66 events. He doesn't even look at that. Just the way that he methodically plods, never really lost his patience, never really lost his cool. There was just sort of like an understanding that I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to self-correct, and I'm still going to give myself an opportunity to win the golf tournament. I think it was incredible to watch over these past 4 days. Rex also wanted to get to a player who did not stick around for the weekend, and that was Brooks Koepka, outside the top 50 at Torrey Pines, which you covered. Early exit here at TPC Scottsdale in his second start. What do you make of the Brooks comeback so far?
He's rusty, and that's full stop. Hard hook on the sentence. There's nothing else to that. I was watching on social media this afternoon where everyone was sort of equating what happened with Brooks, just not this week, but you're right, at the Farmers Insurance Open as well, and what's happened with Patrick Reed the last few weeks on the DP World Tour. And we're going to get into that a little bit later in the show. The argument being that some were making the argument that, oh, well, Brooks Koepka has been playing 54 holes of team golf over on Live, so he's not prepared to land on the PGA Tour. I don't think that's the case at all. What we're seeing is a very rusty Brooks Koepka. It's been months since he was in any competition at all, and he wasn't even particularly sharp last year for a lot of different reasons. So I don't know why the expectations would have been so high with him showing up on the PGA Tour. That's not to say he's not going to figure it out. He clearly has all the talent you need to do that, and I fully anticipate him being able to pull that off. But right now, it's obvious he's rusty. You look at what he's doing statistically, what he's doing on the greens is just awful. And I think I made the argument last week that after Torrey Pines, I expected at least an incremental improvement this week, simply because Torrey Pines, it's POA. It's tough to putt on those greens. These are perfect greens at Scottsdale, and yet he still struggled a little bit. So he has a long ways to go until he can get back to where he wants to be. But I think what we're seeing out of him is at least wanting to take the steps in the right direction. He's going to play a lot of golf between now and the Masters. So it's not as though he's not going to get his reps in. Patrick Reed's a whole different scenario. I think he is playing fantastic golf right now. And neither one of these things have anything to do with live golf in my mind.
Yeah, Brooks is going to get a lot of reps. I think he needs a lot of reps. I would sum up his performance thusly. The putter is a massive liability at the moment, and he's not hitting it good enough to overcome that. Until that changes, and he's not going to be playing the next 2 weeks of the PGA Tour, which are both signature events, might happen in his hometown in South Florida. The Cognizant could happen then. It's pretty obvious, though, Rex. He's got a lot of work to do in the next couple of weeks. All right. Coming up after the short break, Arron Oberholser. Yes, AO. Join the show for a Boots on the Ground segment. Plenty to get into. Stay with us. And for this Boots on the Ground segment, I'm pleased to welcome in my broadcast partner with Golf Channel. That, of course, would be Arron Oberholser. We're going to get to Scottie Scheffler, Victor Hovland, the WM Phoenix Open in its entirety, AO. But first, I want to start with the playoff, how it unfolded. Chris Gotterup defeating Hideki Matsuyama. What was your reaction to what became a pretty thrilling final hour?
It seems to be the MO of the Phoenix Open over the last decade or so to have just a ton of playoffs.
For better or worse, and I would argue worse.
I'll tell you, yeah, if you're a fan of the Super Bowl and you do television for the Golf Channel, you don't like the playoffs. I've been involved in more than a few of them, obviously, on the studio side of it, and Brandel and Paige are dealing with that now. But it's been, this is what this golf course and why everybody loves this golf course, why this golf course, I think, lends itself to this. That finish from 13 through 18, we talk about it all week on the broadcast, what that finish can do for a guy who's trying to make the cut. Anything can happen. You looked at what Thorbjornsen did. He plays it over par, just kind of maybe got a little ahead of himself to a certain extent, thinking about winning the golf tournament. But you can also do what Gotterup did, and you can play the last 7 at 6 under par. And so I think that lends itself to guys, to the field bunching and to this sort of thing happening. The playoff itself, I think we're almost getting used to him at this point in Phoenix, just because of what this finish provides. I felt bad. I want to apologize for the Phoenix Scottsdale fans right now for the 2 yahoos who yelled in Hideki's backswing twice, not only once in regulation for the putt to win the golf tournament, but in his backswing during the playoff while he was teeing off, which, my opinion, led to the hook over there on the left, even though he wasn't driving it well all day. But still, we gotta clean that up, guys, here in Phoenix Scottsdale. It's not cool.
Well, I want to come back to the playoff. I want to come back to Hideki. I want to come back to Gotterup. But I also wanted to ask you about the crowd. The idea that in 2024, things really got sideways at that event. The Thunderbirds decided to make some changes. Now it's been 2 full years since those changes. Did it work out? Did they go too far? Did they not go far enough? Or is it where you like it?
I think it's better. It's definitely better. I was talking with some PGA Tour security actually today while I was on the golf course. And they asked me, have you noticed a difference on the ground walking around, Arron? And I said, yeah, over the last couple of years, walking on the ground, following groups, especially coming down, 15, 16, 17, which can get pretty rowdy. But even in the other reaches of the golf course, when you're walking with the lead groups, it can, or with a big name player, like I was walking with Scottie Scheffler today, you can get some yahoos out there, and it hasn't been as bad as I've noticed it in the past. And so I think that they have done a good job. I think everybody's on the same page, it seems like. Now, listen, there's always going to be that one guy, as we saw today in the playoff, as we saw in regulation. And that's just the nature of this tournament. Unfortunately, I would like to clean it all up, and people have their fun, get rowdy, but as soon as a guy's over the ball, let's, either keep it to a low roar, but no yelling and guys' backswings and things like that. That stuff needs to stop. And I hope that those guys are dealt with swiftly and their tickets pulled, their names are taken, and they don't get to come back.
Funny story. I was actually standing behind 18 on the player bridge, standing right next to a PGA Tour security man when Hideki Matsuyama was lining up the putt to win the golf tournament. I actually remarked to the security personnel, boy, I'm surprised this many people are this quiet. What happens? Of course, then the idiot yells and blows the whole thing. I want to start AO with Chris Gotterup. He has proven himself time and time again now over what is a pretty short PGA Tour career, all things considered, to be a pretty big primetime performer. Outdueled Rory McIlroy head-to-head to win the Scottish Open. We saw what he just did at the Sony Open. Very impressive on the weekend, in particular at YLI. He dusts Scottie Scheffler over their first couple of days here at TPC Scottsdale, and then beats another world-class player in Hideki. What has Chris Gotterup shown you specifically over these past couple of years that shows you that he really has the goods?
He's not afraid of the big moment. I mean, what really got my attention, like, listen, winning on the PGA Tour is difficult no matter the tournament. I saw him win. I knew what he was capable of talking to his coach at Oklahoma, and realized what an athlete he was when I watched him swing a golf club for the first time. I think it was quite a while. I think he might have been still playing at Oklahoma when I saw him for the first time in Puerto Rico a few years back. And then I watched him win Myrtle Beach, and I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of expected on a golf course like that for a guy like Chris Gotterup, who's so athletic, who can hit a ball a long way. But when I watched him go head-to-head with Rory McIlroy last year on a golf course Rory has won on, the Scottish Open, and a golf course where you have to have a decent amount of control going into those greens. I've been out there. I've done that tournament on the ground, and you've got to have a lot of control. Those winds can get up out there, and it can get really firm and fast, and you've really got to be spot on with your distance control. But to be able to take Rory McIlroy on a golf course he's very comfortable on and he's won on, stare him straight in the face and beat him down the stretch really impressed me. And I wasn't expecting it. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I thought Rory was going to win that golf tournament come start the back nine. Fast forward to now, when I saw him at Sony, not a golf course you would think would be built for Chris Gotterup. Narrow, tight, short. You know, you really, again, got to have great control off the tee. He put on a clinic with the driver on the back nine on Sunday when I was following his group and watching him all the way down the stretch. And it was a joke where he was driving the golf ball. I mean, an absolute joke where he was driving the golf ball, hitting wedges and 9-irons into holes like 13 and just demolishing that entire back nine, hitting driver where a lot of people wouldn't hit driver, like on 14, cutting the corner and leaving a flip lob wedge into that green. That guys usually don't do that. And so when I saw that, it said that there's a level of not caring that this guy has that is going to help him going forward, because I've always noticed that when players get in trouble, they either care too little or they care way too much. And it's usually the latter. They care too much. They put too much pressure on themselves and they have a hard time performing down the stretch. Gotterup he was talking to me walking down the fairways, coming down the stretch. I mean, at Sony, just like it was no big deal. And that right there, when you're that comfortable and you're that in the moment, that it's just, that's hard to come by in young players. It's really hard to come by. He's just so cool, calm and collected. Nothing phases him. And I see zero signs of fear when he gets anywhere near the lead. And this was a great come from behind win, obviously.
When he won in Sony a few weeks ago, Ryan and I spent some time talking about the idea that he still has room for improvement, and to take the next step, he probably needs to improve his putting a little bit. He probably needs to improve his wedge play from inside 100 yards. Now, in retrospect, after what he's done the last few weeks, to take the next step, what do you think he has to improve, if anything?
I think, well, now, Rex, we're talking about 4 wins now. And so now we're getting into, okay, now we got to start talking about, invitationals and signature events and contending and competing in those. Obviously, the win at the Scottish Open was a big event, co-sanctioned DP World Tour event with the PGA Tour. But now we're getting into, signature season, and it's next week at Pebble, and then it's LA, and then it's Bay Hill. And I really want to see how he performs in those limited field events against truly the best of the best up against those guys. So it'll be interesting how he progresses to that level. And then, can he contend at Sawgrass at a Players Championship? Can he contend at Augusta National? I would say that as the golf courses get harder and harder, and the level that you have to have becomes finite as far as where you need to land shots, how you need to hit certain shots, that's where I think if he's going to be exposed, that's where I think that we're going to see some exposure where he really needs to work on his game. If you're asking me right now, which you are, I'm going to say wedge game. He needs to improve his wedge game. And it's the problem. And I'll get super golfy for half a second. He has the most forward shaft lean of anybody I've ever seen on the PGA Tour. I mean, damn near anybody I've ever seen on the PGA Tour. So much forward shaft lean. Well, the problem with that much forward shaft lean, especially when you get into the higher lofted clubs, is that you get inconsistencies with impact and turf interaction, and some balls will slide up the face. Some balls will launch off real low and hot, so it's really hard to control your distance. I noticed that a little bit at Sony in Hawaii when I was following him, that he did show certain signs of having some issues in that 75 to 125 yard area. And that's where I think that if anything going forward, he's going to have some issues with the wedge play. Putting, I think if you ask me, there's very few incredible putters on the PGA Tour. If you ask me, 90% of the tour are streaky putters.
Ayo, just back to the forward shaft lean thing a little bit. That's part of his DNA.
It is.
That's his swing. Are you suggesting that he will potentially be hamstrung for his entire career, or do you think it's correctable? Do you think he can tighten up that area from 75 to 125?
I think he can tighten it up. He's just got to find his way. But what I've noticed, talking to teachers, talking to instructors in the past with other guys that they've taught on the PGA Tour who have a lot of forward shaft lean, this is the same problem. All those guys, and every one of those guys that I talked to and every one of those coaches, they're players that I was talking about. And there's not a lot. There's probably a handful, but they all are powerful. But they all are really poor wedge players. And so it's a common theme with guys with a lot of forward shaft lean, that when you get to those higher lofted clubs, that distance controlled with that much speed can become an issue. So he's going to have to figure something out. So far, so good. It's been working. It's been working great. But like I said before, when we move to potentially, if we don't get any rain, and we move to a really hot, firm, fast Bay Hill, where you've got to be Scottie Scheffler, Colin Morikawa, you got to be spot on with your iron and wedge play type stuff. Russell Henley last year, you got to be really, really good with your wedge play and hit your numbers perfect, or else you're not in good shape. Same with players. My gosh, how small and segmented are the greens at Players, and he hits it so far. He's going to have a lot of wedges into the greens at Players. He's going to have the same thing.
It was firm, fast, fiery. You need to be precise. On the weekend at TPC Scottsdale, it was 83 degrees.
Bigger greens to work with. Yeah, bigger greens to work with. I think Lav. I think that there's no doubt I think that you have bigger surfaces here at TPC to work with than let's say the Players. I still think that I think he can do it. He's proved that he can so far. But if we're splitting hairs here, that's where I would say he would need some improvement. Would be making sure that the wedge play from 75 to 125 yards he really has a good understanding of what's going on at every golf course he plays and where his landing spots are.
Ayo, I was preparing for tonight's segment. I was watching Hideki finish up, and I was assuming he was going to win this for the third time. It looked as if he was going to waltz his way in. And even before things started to unravel coming down the stretch, I jotted down the idea that he is one of the most, if not the most, inconsistent star in the game. And I'll just point to last season. He wins the Sony in a very impressive victory. Doesn't have another top 10 finish on the PGA Tour the rest of the year. And that's kind of his MO throughout the entirety of his career. Would you agree with that? And if so, why?
The why is a great question. I didn't.
You agree? Perfect.
But I do agree. I think there's two reasons. There's two things that I've seen from Hideki over his career that could answer that why a little bit. Number one is the putter. I think we always talk about the putter. He'll just go dark for months with the putter, and he'll finish 15th to 25th, or 11th to 30th, or something like that, event after event. But he won't really contend because he couldn't putt it in the ocean if he was standing on the beach at certain events. But honestly, what we saw today was something different that I've noticed over the last couple of years, is that the driver is starting to kind of get a little problematic for him in spots. And he really held it together. I mean, you could honestly make the argument that he was lucky to even be in a playoff today with the way he drove the golf ball. And so I think the inconsistencies stem from driver putter problems and not being as consistent as he needs to with both of those clubs. But I think we know about the putter. We've known about the putter for years, and that's the one that I think that's the biggest issue. But more recently, the drivers really kind of crept up and given him some problems over the last year or so.
Ayo, one of the many roles that you have with Golf Channel is being a between the ropes reporter, on course reporting. You and Bones did an unbelievable job at the WM Phoenix Open. Just curious, what was the most interesting thing that you saw over the past 4 days in Scottsdale?
Wow.
I don't mean outside the gallery ropes. I mean inside. Yes, I mean inside. What did you observe with your very keen eye and your very high golf IQ? My God, get your head out of the gutter.
I really appreciate the specifics on this one, Rob. I noticed that for the third event in a row that I've done inside the ropes and walked with groups. So Sony, Farmers, and now WM, we've got rough, and rough matters. And when you have rough and you have firm greens, you put a premium on guys having to drive the ball fairly well. Like I said, what Hideki did today was Houdini-like, quite honestly, the way he drove the ball. He hit his first fairway on 10. First fairway was hit on 10.
And it was by this much.
By an inch, literally. And so taking that aside, Hideki played great today considering the way he drove the golf ball. I would say that it's nice to see when you have great conditions and you give the PGA Tour agronomy staff, you give them the ability to control the water. I mean, they can make magic happen as long as they've got that nice 4-inch, 3.5 to 4.5 inch thick rough, and which they've had. They even had the Bermuda was up. It was the thickest rough I've seen since I've played in the Sony Open at Waialae. That's such a great observation, because that has really been one of the defining characteristics of the past month. Yes, the rough, and I hope to continue to see it. I mean, we're not going to see it next week at Pebble because of the AMs. So, I mean, that's always the case there. I don't think we're going to see a lot of it. We'll probably see maybe 2.5 inches at the most, and that's understandable. But I hope we see it at Riv. My gosh, I hope we see it at Riv. I know we're going to see it at Bay Hill. I'm sure. I hope. What they did to Cognizant last year, not a fan. I want to see high rough. I want to see firm and fast if they can. I don't want to see 59 shot at Cognizant. No offense to Jake Knapp. I just don't want to see that at that place. And I don't want to see it on the PGA Tour in most spots like golf courses like that. I want these guys challenged off the tee. They're already hitting a Volkswagen on a stick, and they can hit it as straight and as far as they want to. They need some guardrails, some really high, nasty guardrails, and that's rough.
Okay, what was the most interesting thing you saw outside the ropes? No, I'm just kidding.
I'm just kidding. This is a family program.
Family program.
No. That's not where I wanted to go at all. I was so entertained by Scottie Scheffler this week, specifically how he started and how he finished. We just don't see that human side of Scottie very often. Did he send a message to the rest of the field? I saw a headline that said he contended with his B game. I don't even know if it was his B game.
Oh, no. I just actually hit Kevin Van Valkenburg back up on Twitter. He said something Did I pronounce his name right? Sorry, Kevin.
Yes,
if I did.
you
Okay,
got it.
I thought
Nailed
I
it.
thought KVV. I usually just call him KVV. But I hit him back. He said something about Scottie's game or T3, or T3 was his floor this year. And I said, yeah, with his B minus C plus game. I mean, that's what I watched the last 2 days. I mean, he was fighting it. Today, he finally let it go with the driver, and he got some rhythm and semblance of a driver back and hit some really good drives when I was out there watching him the first 10 or 11 holes. But it was still, the wedge play wasn't great. He was having a hard time controlling his distance with the wedges and hitting his landing spots in a lot of areas, at least on the front nine when I was watching him, controlling the wedge and the spin, the trajectory. That's not Scottie. He looked like a video game in La Quinta 2 weeks ago. And this week it was just a different guy. So if you're gonna finish T3 with your B minus C plus game, it's one of those, they know it, he knows it, he knows they know it type of things. These guys are going to have a hard time beating him all year. And it's not about, and guys know it, it's not about how good your good is. It's how good your bad is. And his bad is so much better than everybody else's bad. It's not even close.
First really big event of the year kicks off this week, AO at Pebble Beach. Roy McIlroy turns, Tommy Fleetwood returns, Scottie Scheffler, obviously. What are you expecting from Rory in particular after obviously what was such a groundbreaking year in 2025?
That's a great question. I don't know. I'm super excited to get up there, and I'm really excited to watch Rory play this week to kind of see how he backs up a literal historic year. He's done just about everything that you can possibly do in the game, and now you're just kind of stacking accolades is what he's going to try to do the rest of his career. But when you've done what he's done, I would imagine it'd be really hard to kind of get up for just any event. Even a signature event would be difficult, I think, when you've done what he's done. So I'll be interested to see how he comes out. It's going to be, I think we're going to get some proper Pebble Beach weather. I think we're going to get some rain. I think we're going to get some wind. I think it's going to be cold. I think highs in the mid 50s I see. So I'm excited to watch these guys battle some elements next week, and especially Rory.
What are the feelings like for you when you go back to Pebble? Your career has been so intertwined with that place.
Oh, I love it. I mean, honestly, it's just it's home, man. It's literally home. I grew up playing so much golf there since from a teenager, playing Central Coast section high school championships at Fort Ord and the Black Horse course, to playing in NorCal amateur stuff at Spyglass and Poppy Hills. And we used to have a tournament of champions. If you won a tournament in the Northern California Junior Golf Association worth enough points, you got to play in the tournament champions in December at Pebble Beach. So that was the first time I ever got to play Pebble Beach at 17 years old, when I won a big enough tournament in NorCal where they invited me to play there. So yeah, it's a huge deal. And any chance I get to go up and walk around and hang out at Pebble and especially even Spyglass. I love Spyglass. I probably have more rounds around Spyglass than any of the other golf courses, quite honestly, because of all the NorCal amateur golf that I played there. It's just a special place and one that'll always be real special to me.
Hey, I'll get you out of here on this one. If I made you CEO or commissioner of the PGA Tour for a day, would you continue the West Coast swing as it is, or would you break it up and take a Torrey and put in the summer, take a Pebble and put in the summer, take a Riviera and put it to the summer to better highlight it, to put it in prime time on the West Coast? Or do you like how it is now, where it has sort of a natural progression and then we kick it on over to the East Coast for the Florida swing?
That's a great question. I think if I'm CEO, I'm got to look at it from a business model standpoint and what makes the most business sense. And what potentially, how can I produce the most gain for the players, the most revenue for the tour? And I would think that a playoff events in prime time on the West Coast would be incredible. Torrey in prime time, Pebble in prime time, Riv in prime time, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. And I know they want to move them around the country, obviously, to these different spots, but boy, if you rotated those 3 courses, depending on I don't know what's going to happen next year, obviously. And it's all speculation on what's going to happen with the schedule. But if they're talking about potentially moving events, and I would love to see a rotation of Pebble, Riv, and Torrey as a playoff event. In prime, yeah, absolutely. I think that would, because August, oh man, Lav, if you've ever played in Northern California in August, it's firm, it's fast, it's so much fun. The greens at Pebble are like, they're already tiny. They get even tinier. I mean, you got to be spot on. It's not like what they're going to play next week, where the greens play normal size. They're normal size because they even play bigger because they're usually wet. It is fiery. It's fast. Those golf courses would be amazing in August.
Yeah, I mean, don't even get me started. Pebble Beach is the crown jewel of the PGA Tour schedule. The fact that we have it buried in mid-February instead of highlighting for the Tour Championship on the PGA Tour. I know there's complications with it. It's a resort. They don't necessarily want to give up the golf course in the dead of the summer with all the tourists. I certainly understand that. But if you, again, are commissioner CEO for a day, absolutely.
I'm rotating those 3. I'm rotating those 3 year after year. Pebble, Riv, and Torrey. Pebble, Riv, Torrey for one of the events for sure.
Hey, I don't have to tell you this. The left coast is the best coast. You know this. You've lived it. You live on it. Ayo, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it, buddy. We'll see you down the road.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, and after this short break, Patrick Reed, the PGA Tour's new slogan, and anything else that happened in the world of golf. We'll tackle it next with a little Love It or Lav It. All right, Rex, it's time for our favorite game of Love It or Lav It. If you're new here, you either like something or you hate it. You love it. Pretty self-explanatory. All right, Rex, Patrick Reed, a winner once again on the DP World Tour. He's now gone 1-2-1 over his past 3 starts. So that leads me to believe, should the PGA Tour expedite Patrick Reed's return? Do you love that idea or do you lav that idea?
I lav it, and the reason we use lav is because you're very much a curmudgeon. Everyone knows this about you. So either you love something or you're going to be an old grouchy old man and tell everyone to get off your lawn. But in this particular case, I'm going to be the grouchy old man and tell everyone to get off their lawn. I think it's really cool what P. Reed has done the last few weeks. I think it sets up a really interesting scenario as we get towards the back end of the season. Having been there when me and a couple other reporters informed U.S. President's Cup captain Brent Snedeker that, Patrick's going to be available for the team, and looking at the shock, pure shock in his face, because he didn't realize that, wait, that's actually going to be a thing that's going to happen. And now he's played his way into the top 20. He's guaranteed to get that top 10 card off the DP World Tour, going to the PGA Tour next year. And he's just playing phenomenal golf. This is the Patrick Reed that we anticipated that Live Golf was getting when he left the PGA Tour. And largely, he was not that person when he went over there. And I'm not making the equation that now that he's free of Live Golf, but it's given him an opportunity to play like the player he is. But there is something that he is just much more comfortable with right now. And imagine if he continues I can't imagine how he continues at this pace, but something close to it. He's going to be in the top 10, the top 5 in the world when the time comes for him to come back onto the PGA Tour.
I love this idea because if we're already rewriting the rules with this returning member program, here's another rule that they should write in: a battlefield promotion on the DP World Tour. If you win 3 times, you should automatically jump to the PGA Tour immediately. Already doing it for the Korn Ferry Tour, want the DP World Tour. You do have the strategic alliance. Expedite Patrick Reed to the PGA Tour if he wins one more time. Speaking of the PGA Tour, Rex, if you missed it, a new promotional material came out for the Players' Championship, in which the PGA Tour claimed March is going to be major, thus insinuating that the Players' Championship is, or at least should be, considered a major. You loving or laving it?
I love the concept of it. Let me spit that out. I love the concept of it simply because it would be additive to what we have right now. I don't think anybody in Ponte Vedra, I don't think any players or any media are anticipating, this is going to become a major and one of the other 4 majors is going to have to go away, or it's going to get crowded out of the scene. That's not the case at all. They have 5 majors on the LPGA Tour. There's certainly a precedent set here. I will go back to my own boring argument that I've always held to when it comes to the Players' Championship being a major. You or I or the media won't decide that. The fans won't decide that. The PGA Tour won't decide that. It'll come down to the players. And the players have to speak with one very, very clear voice that, yes, this is a major championship. This is our major championship. That's the way it's going to work. I don't think we're quite there yet, but it is interesting that it feels like we're getting closer.
Problem is you can't have the PGA Tour players who are the ones who are saying it. It's their event. And that's why I, Rex, am laving this one. First of all, the time has passed for the players to become a major. You needed to do it before what has happened over the past 5 years with the fractured landscape, before the PGA Tour lost at minimum 15 to 20 of the best players in the world, before the field at TPC Sawgrass was reduced from 144 to 120, which is going to be in 2026. The FedEx Cup standings alone cannot stand up as a major championship field. But the second biggest one, if you were being a cynic or a skeptic here, Rex, is that the PGA Tour does not own any of the 5 biggest events in golf. There was some scuttlebutt that maybe the PGA Tour is going to be interested in buying the PGA Championship or the Ryder Cup. That's punting that down the road. But in a for-profit world, this move, trying to elevate the Players' Championship to a major championship, could be viewed as an attempt to artificially increase an event's stature just so that the business benefits with PGA Tour and PGA Tour Enterprise. They don't have a major, so now they're trying to create a major. I don't like the optics of that. Real quick before we get out of here, obviously the Phoenix Open ends on Sunday. Should it, Rex, end on Saturday?
Well, yes, as you and I are sitting here taping this on Sunday night, it seems like we're missing out on the game. And so, yes, I'm going to say, yeah, absolutely, it should. In a new world, let's say starting in 2027 on the PGA Tour, the idea is to not be playing golf when the Super Bowl is being played. So I don't even think it's in the conversation. But yes, if we're going to continue to play golf during this week, Saturday's finish.
I love it. Have it the week before the Super Bowl. No conflict, no worry. That's how it should go. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of the Golf Show podcast with Rex and Lav. Make sure you check out Rex all week long on Golf Today and Golf Central. Thanks for listening. Thanks for support. Talk to you guys in a couple of days.